Welcome to the Bible Brief, where we dive into each book of the Bible in just 10 minutes. Today we're kicking off our series with Genesis, the book that starts it all. Genesis isn't just the first book, it's the foundation, setting the stage for the entire biblical story and offering profound insights into the nature of God, humanity, and the world we live in. Traditionally attributed to Moses, Genesis was written around the 15th century BCE, during a time when the Israelites were forming their identity as a people. These stories of creation, promise, and purpose shaped how the Israelites saw themselves and their relationship with God. Imagine hearing these stories as an ancient Israelite, stories that didn't just inform but shaped your entire sense of self and community. In the ancient Near East, cultures were surrounded by a complex mix of beliefs and religions, each with its own stories about creation and the gods. Genesis stands out by offering a unique vision, one God who alone creates, sustains, and governs the universe with purpose and care. Genesis opens with the famous line, "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth." Right from the start, it makes a bold statement. The God of Israel is the creator of everything, bringing life, order, and meaning into existence. The opening chapter of Genesis describes a God who brings light from darkness, order from chaos, and life from the dust of the ground. This chapter is structured almost like a poem, with rhythm and repetition. And God said, and it was so, and God saw that it was good. The progression from light to sky, to land and sea, to plants, animals, and finally humanity reveals a thoughtful order. This is no accident, it's a design. Humanity's creation is the climax of this work, a creation that will go on to play a central role in the rest of the biblical story. In Genesis 1:27, we see humanity's unique place in creation. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them. To be made in the image of God is a profound statement, especially in a world where people often feel small or unworthy. This verse tells us that every person has dignity and worth, not because of what we do, but because of who we are, reflections of God. This concept, known as Imago Dei, would have been revolutionary in the ancient world, where gods were often depicted as indifferent or distant. Here we see a God who is deeply invested in his creation, especially in us. But Genesis doesn't stop at creation, it moves to humanity's first steps in the world. We see Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, surrounded by beauty and abundance, given the freedom to enjoy it all, with one boundary. In Genesis February 16th, 17, God commands, "You are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil." This command isn't about restriction, but about choice. God gives humanity the freedom to choose, making real relationship and trust possible. However, in Genesis 3, the narrative takes a pivotal turn. The serpent tempts Eve, saying, "Did God really say?" This question challenges God's goodness and plants doubt in her mind. Adam and Eve's decision to eat from the tree is more than just breaking a rule. It's about independence from God, a desire to define good and evil on their terms. This act of rebellion introduces sin, alienation, and brokenness into the world, something we can all relate to. The consequences are immediate. Shame, fear, blame, all signs of fractured relationships, not just with God, but with each other. This fall from grace is the beginning of humanity's struggle with sin, a struggle that will run throughout the Bible. Yet even here, God doesn't abandon them. Genesis chapter 3 verse 15 contains what's often called the Proto Evangelium, or the first gospel. "I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head and you will strike his heel." This verse hints at a future where the offspring of Eve will ultimately defeat evil, foreshadowing the coming of Christ. In the midst of judgment, God gives a promise, a glimpse of redemption that will unfold throughout the Bible. As we continue in Genesis, we encounter the story of Noah and the flood. Humanity has spiraled into corruption and violence, but Noah finds favor with God. This section of Genesis tells of a fresh start for creation, almost like a reset button for the world. Through the ark, God preserves a remnant of creation, showing his justice but also his mercy. After the floodwaters recede, God makes a covenant with Noah, symbolized by a rainbow, a promise never to destroy the earth in this way again. This covenant reminds us that while God judges sin, he also desires restoration and relationship. Then we come to one of the most pivotal figures in Genesis, Abraham. In Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 to 3, God calls Abraham with these words, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing." This covenant with Abraham isn't just a promise to him personally, it's a promise for the whole world. Through Abraham's family, God intends to bless all nations. Abraham's journey is one of faith and obedience, but also of struggles and failures. Abraham's story shows us that faith is about trust, even when the outcome isn't clear. Genesis chapter 15, verse 6 captures this beautifully. Abram believed the Lord, and he credited it to him as righteousness. This verse introduces the concept of faith as righteousness, a theme that will be central throughout Scripture. Abraham's faith journey is echoed in our own lives as we learn to trust God, often without seeing the full picture. Genesis then shifts to Abraham's descendants, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. Through Isaac, God reaffirms his covenant, showing that his promises extend beyond one generation. Jacob's story is one of transformation, from a deceiver to one who wrestles with God and is renamed Israel, meaning one who struggles with God. In Genesis chapter 32, verse 28, God says, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome." This moment symbolizes the nation of Israel's relationship with God, a relationship marked by both struggle and blessing. Finally, we reach Joseph, whose story occupies a large portion of Genesis. Sold into slavery by his own brothers, Joseph's life is marked by betrayal, hardship, and ultimately redemption. Through his trials, Joseph rises to become a leader in Egypt, saving countless lives during a severe famine. In Genesis chapter 50, verse 20, Joseph reflects on his journey with these words to his brothers, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Joseph's story shows us that even in the darkest moments, God can bring about redemption and purpose. For believers today, Genesis offers lessons that are as relevant now as they were thousands of years ago. It teaches us about stewardship, the call to care for creation, a responsibility given to humanity from the very beginning. It shows us the value of faith, the importance of community, and the reality of sin and brokenness. And it calls us to trust God's promises just as Abraham did, even when we can't see the full picture. In summary, Genesis is a book of beginnings. It reveals God's love and commitment to his creation and calls us to live in harmony with his will. It's an invitation to find our place in God's story, a story that began in the ancient past and continues through each of us today. As we consider Genesis, we might ask ourselves, how do we reflect God's image in our world? How do we live out his purpose in our lives? Thank you for watching this first episode of the Bible Brief. If you found this helpful, don't forget to hit subscribe, share your thoughts below, and join us next time as we continue exploring the Bible's powerful story, one book at a time.